Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Let's do it.
Hi everyone! Oh, I mean, actually be in front of the mic when I start. Hi everyone! Welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I'm Sid Part 2. Joining me today is...
Steve for fun.
Steve for fun. Yes, as you'll notice,
Steve
I did
for
not
fun.
do my Crypt Keeper impression. This is not an episode of Ghoulie Gentlemen. James Gunn has ruined lives yet again by depriving you of Ghoulie Gentlemen Horror Month because he made some fucking baller-ass television and we just have to sit here and break format to discuss it on a special episode. So, thanks a lot, James Gunn. Way to go.
Silence the gun. Silence the gun.
Yeah, so PeaceMaker Season 2, it has been an interesting year for the new DC universe. It's very fascinating to have James Gunn be the head of this universe and start it off with 3 projects back to back to back that are all him. I don't think he directed many episodes of PeaceMaker Season 2. I didn't catch whether or not he did, I guess. I noticed a couple times when he definitely didn't.
Yeah, he wrote all of them, but he only directed the first and the last.
Okay, yeah, that tracks for me. So I was quite fascinated to see just like the premise has kind of been that James Gunn is replacing the bad will of movies that the DCEU generated with his own goodwill with audiences, and it seems to have mostly worked. But yeah, so 3 projects back to back to back. They all connect together. Surprise, Rick Flag Sr. is the main character of the DCU.
He really is, though. He has had the most consistent arc.
That's the thing that's like killing me right away is, the finale came out just the other night, and immediately people are posting their reactions to it, and there's reactions to the reactions, and I think my favorite thing is just these are not the same characters, talking about Rick Flag and Creature Commandos versus in this, and I'm like, nah, there's like a clear arc. He starts off as one thing and then he gets power and he becomes corrupted by it. I don't know what like, it's a pretty clear delineation there.
James Gunn is a lot of things, but he's not subtle. So I feel like what Rick Flag Sr. goes through in this is like painstakingly mentioned episode by episode. So I agree with you. From Creature Commandos to Superman to this, he's totally having an arc.
Yeah. And so, I don't know, it's interesting to be doing Peacemaker Season 2. This is the thing that I think probably pissed off the most people of, well, I'm going to keep my stuff for the DCEU, but not the other stuff. And I'm like, if I was still like a huge DCEU fan, I could understand being upset by that, but also like putting myself into the creative's shoes to put all that time and effort into a movie, an entire television series, it kind of makes sense. And I'm still of the opinion that I think a lot of Creature Commandos was written for the DCEU before he knew that he would be taking over. But that's just me and my conspiracy theories. I don't have anything to back that up. Because it is still odd that Creature Commandos was like the launching point. I don't think anyone really planned for that. I think it was just already in development, is the vibe that it gave off to me. Especially
because it didn't really connect to anything.
Yeah. Like, it connected to the Suicide Squad, and it sets up Rick Flag Sr. and blah, blah, blah. But, like, it definitely felt like the most leftover thing, particularly with, like, Amanda Waller still in it and stuff. It felt like the most, like, hanger-on thing, and everything else after that felt much more like fresh start. But yeah, season 2
Yeah.
just has been interesting because you and I both watched season 1 of Peacemaker, and like we liked it well
Mhm.
enough. I don't remember loving it. I remember like, okay, Steve enjoyed it, and he's had some good things to say, some negative. So I'll give it a try, and I ended up liking quite a bit of it, but it still wasn't amazing or anything to me. But season 2 was just like every episode seemed to have gotten better and better after the last one, you know? Is that a fair
Yeah.
assessment to you?
Yeah, I mean, season 1, I remember liking it, and then by the time the finale hit, it just kind of felt like it was wiped from my memory as a thing I'd ever seen, and I just never went back to it. But season 2, yeah, you and I were watching it week to week and messaging each other throughout, and just every time an episode would drop, I would get so hyped. I'd turn it into like a Saturday night event. I would be so invested in it. It really benefits from the fact that the episodes were being released weekly, and every episode felt like a clear escalation from the last one, all the way up to the finale. Which the finale is the most low key episode of the whole season,
And
and it's also the longest.
Yeah, yeah. The finale, I think, has been really divisive. I've seen almost nothing but positive reactions to Peacemaker from just people like live tweeting it still, basically, and posting their thoughts like immediately after. And I'd seen like some, I don't really give a shit about Peacemaker. I'm just here for like DC brand loyalty. And once there's more DCU content, I'll probably stop watching like Peacemaker season 3 or whatever it comes out. And I'm like, okay, that's a kind of weird, insane take, but sure. Um, but then like the finale dropped. It's like, gosh, I'm so glad Peacemaker's over. I can't wait to get like some other DCU content. I was only watching it because I'm starved for DCU. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, so you were never really here for like the character journey or the writing. You're just here because it has the logo that I like on it. But
I don't understand that thought process at all, because you're right. A lot of people talk about these kinds of things in that way. If that's your opinion, if your thought process on media is I like this brand, therefore I will consume it even if I don't like it, then just go outside, go
Yeah.
touch grass, get a girlfriend.
I
Don't be like Vigilante yelling at your mom. Like, actually have a life.
I'll be a little bit kinder. I understand that
I won't.
to an extent. Like I've not ever really been much of a Marvel guy. I generally identify more in like the characters of DC universe stuff more, just comics, movies, whatever. But I'm not like blindly loyal to it. Like I'll admit, when we're talking about James Gunn, I didn't like the first Guardians very much. I thought it was like very formulaic MCU shit. But I liked the second one just a lot. That was probably my favorite MCU film until we got like Black Panther. So like I liked those, and those were collectively all better than everything coming out of DCEU at the time. So like I preferred the brand of DC, but not the content that they were producing at that point in time, I guess. So it was interesting to see Peacemaker 2 as kind of a litmus test of like, okay, so how different is it going to be? And it's really in line with a lot of like the tone and stuff of season 1. But it's just a very different character arc and journey for this character. It's kind of funny to hear Gunn talk about, he broke his rule of not bringing back a character he killed just because he was so blown away by John Cena's performance as Peacemaker. And I'm like, he's not even the only one you kill in that movie that you bring back in that movie. Weasel for life.
Oh man,
says a lot of stuff as like as the corporate face of DC that like I just kind of have fully accepted of. No, this is just the PR face. A lot of it just does not hold up to any scrutiny beyond that, and like even that pisses people off. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Let the art speak for itself. You don't have to listen to him talk about it.
the point you made earlier about like the fact that there's different continuities between the DC EU and the new DC universe, and Gunn just kind of porting over his own stuff. I remember people getting really bent out of shape about that, and saying that like the new DC universe didn't have any creative vision, and like if they don't care about what's canon, why should I, and whatever, and all that stuff. And honestly, all I have to say to that is, if you're upset about a superhero universe, a DC superhero universe, having fudgy continuity where things are retconned seemingly out of nowhere while the normal story progresses, you do not read DC comics. Like, name one DC story where this isn't the case. One. Give me one.
What's
Give
the
me one.
webtoon?
You remember that time when Morrison retconned how Talia and Bruce had sex for the first time because you didn't remember how it happened? You remember that? Did we get upset about that?
Yes, actually. People got very upset about that. Because they made Talia
the company
racist.
famous. The company famous for crises. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's been interesting. I generally, like, criticisms I have of the series do kind of come down to just Gunn talking about it too much.
Yeah.
He
just needs to get offline.
Yeah, it was funny because this wasn't like PeaceMaker in particular, but you know, with Superman coming to digital and physical release as PeaceMaker was on air, there's a lot of controversy going around about how you know, the Gunn tried to distance himself from the parallels people were drawing between the situation in Palestine with the Israeli genocide, and him, you know, making statements that just seemed offensive or didn't make sense. I'm like, yeah, but like, what the fuck do you expect him to say? Like, it's just, he's not going to say it out loud. He put it in the movie. I don't know what you want from him, and it just, the very first reaction I had to seeing people talk about it was, I need to find that interview of someone asking Christopher Nolan what he thought about the parallels between The Dark Knight and the Bush administration's unlawful spying on American citizens was like. And Nolan just saying, no, this is about Batman. This has nothing to do with that. Like, we've been doing this for a long fucking time. It's pretty obvious. You just make the message super clear in the art, and then you just, for the corporate shilling out side of things, you just say no to the message, and Hollywood kind of looks the other way, or legitimately just believes you. I don't know. Never trust what an artist says outside of the work itself. Like, and we're getting a similar thing with PeaceMaker, where, you know, the big plot twist of the season that Steve and I were talking about a long time was they're going to Earth X, the Earth where the Nazis won World War II, and Chris just doesn't see it, and like that's the big reveal, and you know, Abs and Judo Master have a whole conversation about how the world isn't very different from their own. And then people ask James Gunn, like, is this a commentary on the rise of, like, Trumpist fascism? Well, no, what are you talking about? It's just a silly comic book show. Like, honestly, good for him. Like, just lie. It's funny.
And to Peacemaker's credit, I also think like it deals with those themes a lot better than his Superman movie does, but that's partly because it's a series, so there's a lot more room for the characters to navigate it. And a lot of the stuff he does with the Nazi world and its parallels to the real world is also stuff that he does in his Suicide Squad movie. So like these are consistent things with him. It's not coming out of nowhere either.
Mm-hmm. Like everything with Rick Flag Jr. in the Suicide Squad, and how he, you know, was literally like disposable to Amanda Waller. He was put on the team that was sent to go die.
Yeah.
And then he, you know, goes through the whole journey, and they're not doing any of this to save anybody. They're doing it to make the United States government not look bad. Is this movie anti-American? No, what are you talking about? It's a silly comic book movie. They're not even in America. Like,
If If you don't mind, if we want to get down to specifics, that's actually a good place to start because the character in this, outside of just Peacemaker himself, that I loved the most was Rick Flag Sr. In part because of just how well he embodies all that stuff. By the end of the series, when he throws Chris into Salvation, and he goes to the Secretary of Defense with this whole plan about taking all the metahumans and shoving them into an alternate reality and all that stuff, and he kind of has this full tilt supervillain mode. It's really on the nose, but it is interesting that he's essentially just recreating the Nazi world, the world where his son actually survives that he never got to meet, by putting together something that would take all the undesirables and move them out of your view. And that coming full circle from this larger character arc we have, where the reason his son dies in the first place is that he refuses to cover up U.S. transgressions, and Peacemaker kills him. And then by the end of that whole thing, his dad just becomes the institution that killed him.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's
so
brilliant.
good.
I think it's actually brilliant, and it's just that, that getting power and, power, just the nature of it corrupts, is such a fascinating story because, as Peacemaker Chris has, like, lost more and more power, he's become, like, a better person than, like, just throughout his story. And I think that was, like, a really interesting way to parallel it. And I think it is kind of crazy that, Rick Flag Sr. is a non-character. He doesn't even exist yet for the purposes of the story in Peacemaker Season 1. There's just, like, the idea that he exists in Suicide Squad 2016 as a fucking black sheep, redheaded stepchild to all of this. Yeah, I guess that means that 2016 Suicide Squad is still at least partially canon.
I guess it would have to be.
Yeah. Because the Suicide Squad is still a direct sequel to it. It's just, better in every conceivable way. Yeah, because it definitely is canon because they talk about it in the flashback where he doesn't want to... he's nervous about breaking up with June because he thinks that she'll kill the world. So it's 100% canon. That's funny.
I mean, we're just dealing with Superboy Prime punch territory, because, like, the ending scene of Peacemaker Season 1 now is a little different because we're in a different universe. Superboy Prime just punch things, and things are weird now.
Well, I think that's the thing that's really funny about, the way that the Flash movie ended, which is, just a pile of shit movie. But, Ezra Miller is stuck in the George Clooney Batman universe somehow or other, but, Jason Momoa is still Aquaman, and it just shows you that the only thing we're keeping from this movie is just shit's a little fucking wacky now. Things have moved around and been changed, and there's really no, like, more explanation for it than Barry's fucking with the timeline has created the time ripple from Flashpoint. And, like, I don't think anyone ever had a problem with, like, that as a concept for Flashpoint. It was more just, like, the tone. And so I don't really mind that if we're going to use the Flash as the conceit to get out of the DCEU and go into a new universe, that these are some of the ripples or the implications that we're getting from it. It doesn't really bother me that it's not like 100% clean break, because for whatever reason DC has liked to just keep their universe connected through these crises events. Which, I mean, it's not the end of the world. You and I were talking about it before we started recording with the animated ones where they've tried to, like, keep themselves connected. Yeah. And, like, that's arguably worse than when they were just like, oh, yeah, fucking Red Hood comes out 1 month and then a couple months later we got a completely new Batman voice actor playing this other version of the character or whatever. I don't know. It's just, it is what it is. People make choices. I don't understand them.
Yeah, I mean, I think Marvel's kind of poisoned the well with people paying too much attention to the parts of a connected universe that shouldn't actually matter. Like, the continuity, at the end of the day, is not important. And neither are, like, consistencies between one person's take on a character and another person's take on a character. At the end of the day, all that really matters is whatever we're doing with these characters, is it interesting and is it good? And for both the Suicide Squad movie James Gunn did and for Peacemaker, both of them are really good, so it doesn't really matter to me.
Yeah. So what did you think of the finale, since that's the one that's been, like, I think the most divisive for people?
I thought it was great. I think the whole show is quality-wise very, very consistent, and I mentioned earlier the finale is the longest episode, but it's also the most low-key. Like, there is no crazy big action sequence in this unless you count the weird goblin candy monster things in that one dimension. Unless you count that, like, there's no real big action scene. Everyone's just sitting and talking and dealing with the ramifications of what happened. And then that big sort of like heel turn at the end when Chris gets thrown into salvation. I don't think that like feels like a cliffhanger or comes out of nowhere for me, because it at the end of the day is just like the final punchline on what Rick Flag Sr. was trying to do, who sort of feels like the main character through everything that James Gunn's been doing lately. So I thought it was really good. My biggest thing with the ending was I love how well they're able to let Chris turn a corner without just solving all of his problems immediately. Because the previous episode had this really like gut-wrenching moment where he just has like this psychotic break in seeing his friends kill his brother and his dad being killed in front of him again, and him just like relapsing through all these terrible things to make himself feel like he's a terrible person and that he's cursed. And when all of his friends confront him in that final episode, the way Gunn's able to like juggle both the jokes and the humanity of it and make it all come full circle in that moment where Abs is telling him all the things that you regret are things that you didn't want to do in that moment. When you're just yourself, you're a good person. That felt so simple, but so perfect to cap off this kind of story.
Yeah, no, I think that's the thing that, you and I are messaging about this a lot. The thing that Gunn can do just objectively well, whether or not you like what he's doing and like the way he gets there, the way he writes the dialogue or whatever, you can't deny that he does really strong character-based writing. These decisions don't just, come out of nowhere. None of this is like plot hole, pull out my ass kind of writing. All of it's generated just from very genuine character-based writing, and I think that's really, really cool. So to have a whole episode, it's the hour-long finale, and it's built up like it's going to be this big epic thing, but ultimately it is just the most, like, you said it perfectly, low-key, character-focused episode is honestly fantastic, and you just get, like, so much rich dimension from them. The scene you mentioned with, like, the intervention for Chris was really, really great. The scene for me that just was like, I can't believe this made it in here, was between Abs and her wife, Key, as they just, like, fully admit to each other that they cannot stay together. And, like, I just loved how mature it was of just, like, I'll always love you. There'll be a part of me that's always going to love you, but I can't be happy with you. Is just such, like, a fucking gut punch scene. And I'm just going to, for episode 1 of season 2 launches, and there's the joke with White Rabbit and the focus on her camel toe and the fact that, like, you can actually see that they sewed camel toe into the outfit from the behind the scenes photo the actress posted. And then you have, like, the whole conversation about it, and this, like, flame war starts up online about how Gunn's sexist and he can't write female characters. And then you get to the end of season 2 with this just absolutely heartbreaking passing the fucking Bechdel test scene between Abs and her wife is there. Like, or he just writes, like, a range of female characters. I don't know what to tell you guys. Because, like, you talked about that with when Guardians 2 came out, about how, like, Mantis feels like a very sexist character, and, like, I would genuinely agree with you if not for the fact that you have, like, Nebula and Gamora in that same film, right? And they're, like, probably the best female character dynamic in the entire MCU.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that when we were reviewing Superman, that, like, I love everything about Nebula and Gamora in that movie, and I even love everything about Gamora in Guardians 3 when he has to undo all the bullshit the Russo brothers did to her. So, like, yeah, he writes a wide range of characters, but what's also really good about Peacemaker and how he writes the characters here is he's able to juggle all of these other stories in a way that feels coherent and like real emotional payoffs, not things that come out of nowhere. Where, like, that scene with Abs and her girlfriend, that's not the A plot of any one episode. But what she's dealing with Chris and how she's set up and what she's doing along the sidelines and even her conversations with Judo Master and all that, it's all building towards that conclusion. And that confrontation, or not confrontation, but like that sort of final goodbye she has with her girlfriend,
Wife.
that is also like, or wife, yeah, has the same sort of resonance and the same kind of arc and lesson that she's trying to instill in Peacemaker. And then Peacemaker's whole arc is also something that has to rub off on Harcourt because she's going through a similar thing. Like, all of these characters are on the same wavelength, which is part of why they have such a great dynamic, but it's also why the whole show feels like it's always heading towards all these very natural conclusions to all these separate threads, even though you're not spending the most time on all of them.
Yeah, 100%. So I don't know, I just think that, like, there was conversation I had with someone, like, probably over a year ago now when I was going through the Game of Thrones books, and they, like, made the argument or the claim that, like, when George R.R. Martin writes a villain, he makes them a child molester. And I'm like, I don't know if he's ever, like, written a villain. He's written really bad people, but, like, they're all kind of in it for their own goals, and he'll clue you in that someone's going to be a piece of shit pretty early on by, like, having them do really horrific acts. And I think this might just be kind of a similar thing with Gunn, of, like, if he wants you to know that someone's gonna be, not a great person, he'll have them start acting kind of, sexist or racist or just off in general. He'll have them make you uncomfortable. And that doesn't mean that they're going to be a villain, quote unquote. It just means that they're going to be someone that, like, has to be dealt with. And so I think, we have that with I forget the character's name, the guy with bird blindness throughout this.
He's so fucking funny.
But, like, he's introduced and he's just, like, fucking ripping on what's his name,
Economos?
Yeah, Economos. He's just ripping on Economos in the van in his first episode, and then he, like, kind of, treats his backup team like shit, and then it all kind of comes to a head for him, and it seems like he's just going to be, like, a character on the bad side, but then, you get that scene where Economos books Chris as soon as he comes into Argus, so that they can't just kill him and make him disappear. And, he looks over at Economos, he's like, you did the right thing. Like, he just stands up for him, and he doesn't even stand up for him. He just reassures him, and that's, like, your first hint that, maybe this guy is more than this. And you get the season finale, he starts off just telling this really, like, disgusting story to embarrass this person, and I've seen people reacting to that scene, like, really a fucking 2-minute scene talking about throwing up on a stripper's tits. That's disgusting. Like, maybe that's the fucking point, because, like, 2 minutes later, the guy he's telling the story about is fucking dead, and he's traumatized by it.
I feel like, when did I become the person who was like, man, just have fun? Because, like, I don't know, man, 2-minute story about throwing up on a stripper's tits, that's fucking hilarious to me. Just have some fun, damn.
Yeah,
no, you're right. Sorry, go ahead.
I think, like, the accusations of sexism are less about, like, the quality of the writing, and, I never want to just directly accuse someone of this, because I do think it's small-minded, and it comes off as, like, not taking someone's criticism seriously. But there comes a point where it's not about the quality of the writing or the quality of the person. It's just about you wanting to find an excuse to not like it. And it's okay to not like it, but like there comes those like complaints and those critiques that I don't think that like just don't stand up to any kind of scrutiny. And so I don't think it's about the complaint itself. It's just trying to find an excuse to hate on the thing.
Well, and we can pivot off of this here in a second, but I think part of what goes into that is anytime someone doesn't like something and they start throwing out the words like sexist or racist without putting a lot of thought behind the actual content of the thing that they're talking about, it's because not only do they not like something, but they feel like in order to justify it, it has to be discussed in moralizing terms so they can't be wrong. So I don't like this, but it's not just that I don't like it. It is that it is on a moral level bad. And if I say that and you disagree with me, then you're bad. And that kind of grandstanding happens a lot in fiction. And I think in general that's what people end up doing with a lot of this stuff, where they don't want to like talk about the real meat of it and whether or not it's sexist in a real way, in a way that harms people, in a way that feels like it's in conversation with the piece. They just want to moralize to justify their own opinion in a way that's not actually conducive to a conversation. But that all aside, yeah, the stuff with all of the female characters in this, I feel like all of them have a wide range here. And I think that Gunn deserves a lot of credit for not only letting them all have their own breaths and different ways that they can go, but also all contributing to the wider story of what Chris is going through and what the difference really is on a material level between this Earth and the other Earth. There's that really great bit where Harcourt and everybody goes over to the Nazi world, and one of the first things that people point out about her is that in that world she's never wearing pants. She's just always wearing dresses. And the actress who plays Harcourt made this post where she referred to the Nazi universe Harcourt as softcourt, which is fucking hilarious. Softcourt. But like in that world there is this sort of like picture perfect American suburbia thing happening, and she's the first person who walks in and directly says, hey, there's no people of color here, it's just white people all over the place. And Chris, being both an idiot and also a white guy, just ignores all the telltale signs of that. But she's actually got enough of an awareness to point it out, and then it's Abs who has to deal with the consequences of it, and that is also how Abs and Judo Master bond, because they're not on the same side, but in this world they're both put in a similar position.
Okay, side tangent, just because you mentioned it, and I was rewatching a clip of that scene of Judo Master talking about, you know, you can't be here if you're of color, or gay, or Buddhist, or any of the things that I am. And it just made me have a quick pause and went, so what the fuck happened to Japan in this universe? Like, no, because, listen, I've read a lot of, like, history stuff, and the Nazi, like, spinning to justify their alliance with Japan within the context of their own propaganda is nothing short of fucking hilarious, because they have to be like, oh no, but they're the Aryans of the Asian race. It's just, what the fuck does that even mean? So like, I actually have no doubt in my mind that like had Hitler won the war with the Allies, that eventually he probably would have turned on Japan. But I just generally, like, as he said that, I was like, what the fuck happened to Japan? It's just the first thought that crossed my mind. I'm like, where'd they go? You can't be Buddhist? What? Because like Japan was trying to conquer China because like they were building on the whole Meiji reform. Another side note: I was watching a historian / political scientist talk about Japan and their role in the war, and she's like, it is really a shame that Japan took the Meiji reforms and went off and did their whole imperialist spiel, because otherwise people would talk about the Meiji reforms quite positively. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. The imperialist spiel was the point of the Meiji reforms. You can't separate these two things. They said, no, we don't want to be conquered by an imperial power. We want to be an imperial power and conquer things. So we're going to take
Correct.
the lessons from imperialism and just impose them on ourselves. And there we go. Like that was the intent. It was not a bug. It was a feature. So sorry, historical sidetrack.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, the Nazi world is really interesting. For both all of the weird alternate history stuff and all the jokes that come out of it, like the fact that like Scrabble is named something different and Cheetos are something different, which is just weird and entertaining. But also because there is this sort of like eerie undercurrent about the whole premise of the season. Once you realize that you're in the Nazi world and that's Chris's quote unquote perfect world. There's a lot of conversation in politics lately about this idea of like the male loneliness epidemic and whether or not that's the right way to frame it and whether or not it's legitimate is a whole different sidebar. But there is this interesting thing happening where there's a lot of stories being told in fiction and with people about depressed white guys in their place in the world and whether or not they have one. And I think it's really interesting that PeaceMaker, Chad Powers, and now Roofman all come out within the same summer. And all of them are about these white guys who regret something in their past, who then adopt a different persona and live in a fantasy world that's kind of infantilizing to them instead of just dealing with the consequences of their own life. And Chris's in particular is so interesting because it finally does superhero comic book multiversey stuff in a way that feels really thematically resonant. And we talked about this before too, but the whole conceit of this just being that it's not about bridging together a bunch of alternate universes and having cameos and Easter eggs and all that stuff. It's about this really very real feeling of regretting your life choices and wishing that you could live a different life. And the consequence of that for Chris is if he ignores the consequences of his actions, then the kind of person he would become that's happy with that is a sociopathic Nazi. Because you have to regret your choices to grow from them. Otherwise, you're just living in denial, and that's what that entire other universe ends up being.
Yeah. I'm a little torn on one thing because I think the reveal for the Earth X drop, which like had started to be theorized about. I know you and I talked about it where I was like, I just saw one person say, "Damn, there's no black people in this other universe. What the fuck?" And I was like, "Oh man, what if it is Earth X? Or what if it is like the Nazi Earth?" Because his dad was like a Klan member in season 1, and this alternate version's just a hero over here. And then like that really was spreading and became like the popular theory really quickly after that. So a little pat on my back for not seeing anyone else talk about it first before coming up to those own conclusions. But it is just that was the big theory, and then we get the reveal, and one got out, a black escaped, just being like, oh shit, she's just running from the whole fucking crowd, and that's you get the look at the little flag, and you see the swastika up in the blue corner, which is terrible flag design, by the way, but whatever. Like from both perspectives, from both American and Nazi perspectives, neither would be happy with that flag. But like,
it's got to be just recognizable enough so that we notice it, but we don't notice it.
Yeah, no, for sure. But like, it's just all these great moments that reveal, and like, so two things on the episode following the reveal. One that I liked, one that I was disappointed by. I really liked how just immediately like Chris doesn't live in denial about it or anything. He is just, as soon as he's confronted with it, he immediately turns on that universe and is not interested in, trying to like fight for it or save it or anything. As soon as he realizes how badly he's fucked up, he just like kind of owns it and immediately starts to make it right. One thing that is a negative for me is I didn't like the jokes about like Mein Kampf on the desks and the big portrait of Hitler that he missed. That felt very like Thor Ragnarok, Bruce Banner jumping out of the thing and just landing on the Rainbow Bridge and not turning into
A
Hulk.
little too like slapsticky at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, that one was kind of a letdown. And I think, by and large, James Gunn has tried to adapt a lot of what worked about the MCU and tried to abandon the things that didn't. And unfortunately, I think one of the things that he has brought over that I kind of wish he'd left behind is not just like comedy and as a whole, but like kind of jokes that undercut the just reality of these worlds. We had that a little bit in Superman, where Justice Gang is kind of like a joke name and stuff, and I don't love it. It's just one of those things. We've been doing this for so long, and I'm never gonna get over the. It was like some kind of Incredible Hulk thing. Just I fucking hate it every time, and I didn't like it here.
I agree with you, but I'll play devil's advocate for just a minute, because I do think there is a difference between some of the way the MCU does it and the way that James Gunn does it. Not that it always works, but James Gunn is a Troma Pictures guy. He comes from a background of just doing really mean-spirited jokes and really punchy down jokes and really dirty jokes and just jokes all over the map, some of which that he had to like later apologize for. And not that I thought any of them were particularly terrible, like I've heard worse. But the thing about James Gunn is a lot of his humor is it's always to take the air out of a particular target or particular person in a way that doesn't hold it sacred. So like if you're gonna make a joke about a James Gunn thing, you're making fun of somebody or something in a way. And as he's gotten better at understanding what kinds of things you can make fun of and what kinds of things you can't. The Marvel formula for a lot of this stuff is to be ashamed of the idea that you live in a comic book universe and to like throw in these one-liners that are almost like staring you at the screen of like, see, we said the thing, in a way that's completely devoid of drama. I think with Gunn, most of what he tries to do is he tries to just take the air out of whatever thing he's trying to make fun of. And sometimes, it does show up in a situation where it feels like it's taking out of the air of something you shouldn't take the air out of. But I do think that's part of just his sensibility and less of a Marvel specific thing. I think the problem with Marvel is they got the two best guys in the business to do that, which was Joss Whedon and James Gunn. And then, Joss Whedon can just go fuck off and die for being a terrible person, and James Gunn left them. But those two guys are very good at that, and everyone else in the Marvel bullpen of movies has been trying to copy them and are nowhere near as talented as them at doing that thing. So they do it a lot worse, and they do it a lot more consistently. But I will say, those kinds of jokes in both Superman and PeaceMaker, I think they are very James Gunn jokes. They're just not the best jokes.
Yeah, again, it's that wind out of the sails moment of you do a serious thing. Like, I don't know if I'm going to go back and watch this again anytime soon, but like, especially just imagining trying to like watch one episode after the other, having that height of the like, oh shit reveal go right into, well, I didn't notice the big mural of Hitler is just kind of like a stupid joke, and I don't think it landed. So, at the risk of sounding like just praising James Gunn as like, DC Jesus or something, which is, of course, James Gunn is not DC Jesus. That's Superman.
No. DC Jesus is just Jesus. He just shows up in the comics.
Sometimes. Man, someone needs to have the balls to just do a Jesus book in a superhero universe. Just fucking go for it. It'd be so funny.
Hey, man. Jesus was a supporting character in Ghost Rider for a while.
Oh, that's cool.
It was really cool. He was a hippie. It was awesome.
That's a good place for it. I didn't know about that. That's hype.
Yeah. No, there was a lot of controversy around that time. I'll see if I can dig up the issues someday. But anyway, yeah, no, I agree with you. But again, I do think in large part Gunn takes the implications of the Nazi world really seriously when it comes to those characters. Because like you said, when Chris realizes the world he's in, he reacts immediately and wants to go back. But at the end of the day, the core of that character is he's trying to escape from the things that he thinks he's at fault for. And to Abs's point later, when he's not in his own head thinking about those things and is just being himself, he makes his best decisions. Which, case in point there, the second he realized he was in Nazi world, he ran the fuck away. Because that's what you should do.
Yep. No, I really appreciated that. Like, that's the... I guess that's like the crisis of conscience a lot of people on the right wing have found themselves in, because there's always been like an interest in critiquing American right-wing politics as being really pro-fascist, but there's like at least there was a time when you could argue that it wasn't, and that there were some legitimate like political beliefs here that were like worthy of exploring and giving some merit to. But like now we've just come to the point where like all pretense has been dropped, and if you're still a Republican, you're just cool with fascism at this point. There's really no like, you know, the never Trumper kind of thing. Like if you're still like a proud Republican, then you are a proud fascist. There's just no like gulf between those things anymore. So to kind of like parallel that with Chris and have him just be someone that like completely like bails out the second he realizes what he's in, because nothing that attracted to him to that universe had changed at that point, right? Like he just realizes how badly he's fucked up by the stakes of the reveal for him. And like to see him just abandon his perfect world in an instant was actually pretty good.
Yeah, I like that a lot, and I like that there was a chance for Chris to see a different version of his dad, because the only version of his dad that he knew was like basically superhero KKK or supervillain KKK guy, and this version is a lot more of just like a centrist liberal kind of minded, and then he immediately gets stabbed in the neck by Vigilante, which is awesome.
I thought that was so great. Of like you start to see him spout like he's got an argument, and it's not even like he's taking the piss out of the argument. He legitimately just like, oh well, if you stand up for every injustice in your world, then I applaud you. And it's like, okay, fair enough, but then just nah, fuck that. Just this guy dies now was pretty fucking ballsy.
No, that was great, but I really like that bit. I really like that bit in part because I think what's so cool about Peacemaker in this as a character is his relationship to his dad and him trying to figure out what kind of person he can be without the voice of his dad in his ear the whole time, because that's the thing that led to him killing his brother. But it's also like that the big thematic undercurrent of the first season where Chris is trying to decide if he can ever be better than his dad. And in that alternate universe, because you're able to spend a little bit more time with a version of him that isn't just cartoonishly evil, you start to see elements in the way he interacts with his boys, and what Chris misses, that as bad as he was also still his dad, and there are still qualities about him in Chris that he can't fully disengage from. And doing that in the Nazi world by making him much less of a Nazi is a hard line to toe, but I thought he did it really well.
Yeah, no, I thought that was like a really just cool dynamic to play with, because you see you get that reveal in, what was it, episode 6 or whatever, where the reveal happens, Economos gets captured, and Augie just like immediately stabs him, immediately starts torturing him. It's looking really bad for Chris. When he gets cornered by them and they bring him back to the house, it looks like it's going to be a really bad situation for them. And then to have him be like the voice of compassion and reason, it's like, oh, it was an accident then. It was self-defense. And Keith is the one who's actually pissed off, and like he's the one that we've gotten to know a lot better. And seems like the one that actually cares the most about his brother. And then you get like the reveal. I think that's that whole thing of everything that leads up to Keith almost dying and like getting taken away, and Harcourt was about to kill him, but then she has to be thrown out of that universe at the last possible second, and everything. I think that was probably the biggest point at which people were expecting, kind of an action-packed finale, and to
Yeah.
see nothing done with that. Even the actor was saying like, it's like the greatest supervillain origin ever. And I'm like, nah, yeah, there's a lot there. And so to have all of that set up not pay off in the season finale, especially an extra long season finale, I do think I can understand people's concern with that. And there's like discussion of, Gunn's biggest critique of the MCU was that none of the TV shows or movies were standing on their own. They were all just being used to set up the next thing, and to have the season finale, basically just set up checkmate and whatever the hell's going on with Salvation, and for Gunn to come out immediately afterward and say that he doesn't have any plans for a Peacemaker season 3, and leave that plot point with Keith up in the air. I can see a criticism to all of that, but simultaneously, I think that Chris's arc is definitively closed and reaches a conclusion in a very satisfying way by the end of season 2, and that the rest of that is the kind of thing that I would want to be set up for later projects in this universe. Like, everyone, the founding of Checkmate feels like a conclusion in and of itself, and I don't necessarily need a Checkmate show. I don't even necessarily need to see Keith come back, because I just understand that dude's in his own universe and really fucking hates Peacemaker now. So if we ever see him again, then yeah, there's justification for that. But like, as is, we don't necessarily need to see any more from that character.
I do also think the other like sort of big problem with a lot of Marvel stuff is the third act of the Marvel thing is always just big CGI slugfest, where no matter how good a Marvel movie is, at a certain point it stops being a movie and just becomes that. Thunderbolts had this, like it's just a constant thing of like, it doesn't matter how well you write your characters to deal with these things, that's just where they inevitably go. And I think part of why the Peacemaker finale lands so well, and why I don't think of it as only setting up future stuff, is this was a show that was allowed to have a complete arc for all of its characters, where the finale didn't have to be a big bombastic action thing because narratively it wasn't called for. But also, the problem with a lot of those big bombastic superhero action scenes is most of the time they're contradictory to whatever the main idea of the thing is supposed to be, simply for the excuse of having an action scene in them. And I think, depending on how you would handle it, obviously, I do think there'd be an argument of if Keith, Nazi Keith, just came back and had a big blowout punch fight with Peacemaker, a lot of the nuance of these two worlds are a lot closer than how much they want to admit, how much Rick Flag Sr. is basically just recreating this world on our world, and the fact that Chris both has to accept the fact that he fucked up as a kid and his relationship with Keith, and also just move on with his life. A lot of that would be lost if you could just distill it down and reduce it to a fist fight with the evil version of your brother, because that feels like it puts too fine a point on it and literalizes too much of it.
Perhaps, like, again, I will not be surprised if we see him at a later date. How big a role he'll have is, kind of up in the air, with Chris being abandoned on Salvation, and that seeming to be kind of the lead up to whatever's going to happen with Man of Tomorrow. Or I've seen some theorization that might be the premise of, like, the case they're investigating in Lanterns is just the mysterious disappearance of all these metahumans, which would kind of be
that'd be cool.
Yeah, I kind of like that theory. I could be down for that. So, like, there is potential for these things to be solved, but I think just fundamentally, the fact that we don't get, like, this big action-y payoff is, in and of itself, like, a good thing. The fact that it is just a fully character-focused conclusion, I think, was the right decision. And I don't know, we'll see how the reactions go. I will say, like I said, initial reactions to the finale is a lot of people feel disappointed. Even the people that liked it were kind of just like, wait, really? That's it? And that's probably not the best reaction, especially to like this is the end of your first year of production for this new universe. That's probably not like the note you wanted to go out on of wait, that was it. But like from a purely storytelling standpoint, I do think it was the right call. I will admit though, I was surprised when we got to the end and he's just like, being thrown into salvation. I'm like, no, this feels like the ending. This feels like the ending. We're not going to do anything with Keith. And sure enough, we didn't. And I was like, well, okay then. I was pretty blown away by that.
Yeah, no, I like all of those choices. I think at the end of the day, they do show that he's got a very different style and a very different sensibility than Marvel, because he's allowing the thing that you're watching to just be its own thing, even if it has to be part of a larger universe. As these things go on, I'm going to start worrying when more and more of the connective tissue starts taking up more of the runtime. Because Marvel started this way too, right? Like, you watched Iron Man, and then the Nick Fury cameo thing happens at the very end. The SHIELD acronym thing happens at the very end. It's fine, it's cool, it's whatever. Captain America, same way. Thor, the same way, whatever. And then eventually you get into the subsequent phases, and it's like those little things that were just teasers for the next movie become massive chunks of the movies, to the point where the movies can't function on their own. And we're so young in this DC universe right now that can't happen yet. But right now, because we're still kind of in that honeymoon phase, those connections start to feel at least a little bit more, they feel more like proper teasers. They feel more like this will be like a fun premise or a fun pitch for the next thing to go off. But the individual products still have to stand on their own, because that's the only way you can start getting people on board with it. Superman works perfectly fine on its own. Gunn has said that you won't have to watch Peacemaker to understand Man of Tomorrow. Lex showing up in here didn't require you... that was so good. Lex showing up in here did not require any sort of foreknowledge about Superman, because the show gives you all the context clues for it. But I can't imagine you'll have to know that Lex Luthor had a cameo in this to understand what happens next in the movies. Like, there's a balancing act to this. I think we've jumped the shark with shared universes, that the sort of bare bones problems you're going to have are always going to be there now. And now it's just a question of like, how much of it are you willing to accept? And this is like when you salt your food. Like, you probably shouldn't put too much salt in your food, but just enough is fine. This is just enough salt.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Kind of the point that I made early on with like the Lex cameo and also with like Rick Flag Sr. Is you go back and like you watch, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. season 1, right? And like that's probably the season that was the best integrated with the MCU. That's what it still felt like. It was actually a part of it, right? Because you have all these things going on. It takes place immediately after Avengers. You get Nick Fury at the end of it, and you get the Hydra reveal as like the big, mid-season break, because that's when Winter Soldier came out. So then all the characters are dealing with all the fallout from Hydra, blah, blah, blah. But then after that, like, it just gets further and further away, to the point where the people watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. season 4 just hated themselves. Like, I can't imagine anyone actually cared about it at that point. And the movie certainly never acknowledged it. And this was also, kind of the problem that Daredevil and the other Netflix shows were in for a while, where like, Daredevil showing up in Spider-Man No Way Home, people freaked out about it because like, oh man, yay, the Netflix shows are canon. I'm like, were they ever not? Wasn't that the whole appeal of them, is that they took place in the MCU? Why did we need the movies to acknowledge them? That's the problem. The movies never acknowledged them. So it just felt so weird and disconnected. So to have this DCU start off with Rick Flag Sr. in his little cartoon adventure, which is still such the weirdest place to start a universe, but whatever.
That was a good show too, by the way. I liked Creature Commandos.
Me too, but it is still just so funny to be like the start of the universe, to compare like, the MCU all started with Iron Man 2008. DCEU started with Man of Steel 2013. DCU started with, well, kind of Creature Commandos. Like, it's just funny. But no, like, so you have like Rick Flag Sr. who shows up in Superman, and then like he gets to have more of a role in this to the point where like he is basically just the main antagonist of the series. To you know, you get Nicholas Hoult, who's probably like the biggest. I don't know. Arguably, John Cena's been in more movies, but I think Nicholas Holt's got, you know, the bigger dick when it comes to acting chops. You know, Nicholas Hoult showing up for a cameo as Lex Luthor in this, and it's just one scene of the dude talking in prison. It's fantastic. And then you get like all of Lex's lackeys from the movie showing up to like surround Rick Flag, and like he's their boy now, kind of thing. I thought all of that, and you know, you got like Guy Gardner and Hawkgirl and Max Lord showing up in the first episode and stuff. Just that choice to pick, you know, lesser named actors so that you can have them appear in everything and it's not as big a deal. It's not going to kill your show's budget or your TV or your movie's budget to have this other actor appear, and you can actually integrate it into the plot, unlike something like Loki pretending to be Captain America in Thor: The Dark World, right? Like that's... I still love that cameo. That was a great cameo. It was funny. It got a laugh out of the audience, but it's actually meaningless to the plot. It doesn't add anything. It literally could have been any of the Avengers. It could have been fucking anybody. But just the fact that you got it, that did help it. It did make it feel cooler. This feels better. This actually makes it feel truly connected and not just like, you know, Johnny off in the corner playing with his toys. Kind of attitude. So like I really do think that was just, you know, if we're talking about Gunn as the head suit, the PR person that's making these creative decisions in the same way Kevin Feige did, I think choosing lesser named actors and letting them kind of come back and forth between the movies and the shows and stuff is a really, really smart decision.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, time's going to tell how cohesive a lot of that stuff ends up being. Because right now, the three things, or the four things, if you count Suicide Squad, the four things that make up the DCEU are all things written and directed by James Gunn in some capacity. So they all have a sort of cohesion to them, but they're also all with a well of actors that he's worked with consistently as well. We're not going to get a fully non-James Gunn thing until next year with Lanterns and Supergirl. And seeing how those two things gel with the kind of tone, style, and actors we've seen so far is going to be really interesting. I don't love the director who's attached to Supergirl, but I like his stuff well enough. It's based on a really good Supergirl comic. It's based on the one Supergirl comic anybody knows. So, I mean, that's nice. And then the Lantern show... the Lantern show... It's written by Tom King, which is interesting. I love Tom King, and I really like the actors that they picked for Hal and Jon Stewart. So we'll see, but we haven't seen anything from that show but one still. So we'll see how all that kind of bridges together. But you're right. I feel like as this show kind of takes shape and more of that different DC universe elements start to seep in, it does a really good job of highlighting those connections without ever feeling like it's sort of couching on your investment with those things already. The Lex Luthor lackeys, they're all just kind of bit parts in the Superman movie. They're entertaining, but they're just kind of bit parts, and they're consistent with that here. But being able to surround Rick Flag Sr. with the same people that Lex had before, and using that visual cue to kind of highlight how much that this guy has now just become straight up the bad guy is good. Like it's a good shorthand for defining that arc without having to just spell it out for the audience. Real quick, I don't know if you had another spot to go into, but I do want to talk about Rick Flag Jr. too. Mm-hmm. I love Rick Flag Jr. in the comics. I love the Suicide Squad comics, the John Ostrander comics. I'm like the one guy you're going to find on the internet who's who's a Rick Flag Jr. stan from the comics because I love Rick Flag Jr. He's awesome.
Is he your Gulp Shadow?
He is. He's like, what's one DC Universe guy that you can write a story for who isn't a major superhero? Rick Flag Jr. but but no, I really like Rick Flag Jr. in the comics. I'm a huge fan of that John Ostrander's Suicide Squad run. I think it's one of the best things DC ever published. But so much of that series is just a psychodrama between the various members of the Suicide Squad and how they relate to each other. And Rick Flag Jr. and Deadshot have a really contentious relationship throughout that whole run. Deadshot, because he's always kind of chasing this phantom image of his brother that he killed, and then Rick Flag Jr., who's always just Junior, who's always chasing like the reputation and the status of his dad. And these two guys kind of come to blows because Rick Flag Jr. essentially replaces in Deadshot's mind Deadshot's brother. And so it's almost like he imprinted on him, basically. While Rick Flag Jr. hates everything about the Suicide Squad, loves superheroes and like loves Batman and stuff, and it feels embarrassed that he has to stand up to real heroes to defend the Suicide Squad. So like that stuff's really interesting. And the Suicide Squad movie that James Gunn wrote, it does a lot of interesting stuff with every member of that Suicide Squad. They all have daddy issues. They all have really specific problems with either abusive parents or parents that left them for one reason or another. And Rick Flag Jr. is in that movie, but you don't get a lot with his dad because I guess at that point James Gunn hadn't thought about writing Rick Flag Sr. the way he has. So now that you've like fleshed that character out and you're able to kind of see what Rick Flag Jr. was in that movie and what Rick Flag Sr. is as we see them, I think that makes for a really compelling contrast. I said before, Rick Flag Sr. basically becomes the very thing that would end up killing his son. But at the same time, Chris kills Rick Flag Jr. and then ends up becoming the kind of person that would be killed by someone like Rick Flag's dad. So it's almost like they're trading places in that way. And I really, really like that. I also really like the cameo that we get of Rick Flag Jr. in this, where you get to see that he's not a perfect person, where he's cheating on his girlfriend with Harcourt, and then the Nazi-fied version of him is just kind of a bitch. Like, doesn't do anything, can't stand up for himself. It's so funny. He's such a bitch.
I loved that contrast of you had Rick Flag Jr. in the main universe, like, died a hero trying to do the right thing, even though it was like the thing he was doing against orders, right? Like the very Captain Kirk kind of moment. He was trying to do the right thing, even though it broke all the rules to do so, and that's why PeaceMaker had to kill him. And you contrast that with his like personality in this universe, where this fascist universe has no use for someone who's always going to do the right thing. So it like, you know, breaks him down and just makes him into this like pathetic little worm of a person. And you can contrast that with Chris Smith, who will be a good soldier and follow orders. And so he excels and he's like the hero of this universe. So like Chris gets to come in and see what that feels like, and it feels good. And just the way that like he is just so shocked in reaction to meeting Rick Flag Jr. in that universe of like, you know, the attitude John Cena has in that moment. The only thing I can compare it to is like a kid who's wearing their dad's clothes when their dad comes home from work and is just not sure if they're going to be in trouble for it. You know, like that's just the vibe that he has of like just getting caught doing like pretending to be an adult or something. Is just the like attitude he's giving off in that moment.
Because even in the Suicide Squad movie, when Peacemaker is essentially the bad guy, he says that he looks up to Rick Flag Jr. He calls him a hero. So the fact that he calls him a hero, that he retroactively learns that he was Harcourt's best friend and he killed him, and then he gets to come face to face with him, and all those things are kind of coming to a head right in that moment. He really is just kind of a deer in a headlight there, and I really, really love that. The one thing we don't get in this, which I don't know if it's a bad thing or a good thing, because I think you could kind of take it either way, is we don't get a scene of Rick Flag Sr. ever interacting with Rick Flag Jr., even in flashback. I think thematically you don't need that. I don't think that having Nazi Rick Flag Jr. meet Nazi Rick Flag Sr. would have amounted to much aside from just reducing all the interesting tensions to make them too obvious. And I don't think that you would have gotten any more emotional weight out of Rick Flag Sr. if you had a flashback with Rick Flag Jr., because his absence is the thing that's driving him. And he's such a good character, and you sympathize with him for so long, in part because he's playing off that absence so well. So you kind of can't have it. But at the same time, I do not buy these guys as father and son at all. Not even remotely. And I just kind of need to see them in the same room together to change my mind.
It's funny because I remember someone, just a James Gunn hater was trying to like dunk on it when the casting was first announced of like, he's only 14 years older than his so-called son. What the fuck is James Gunn doing with this universe? And then like one of the first lines from Rick Flag Sr. in regards to his relationship to his son is, me and my wife, we got pregnant when we were just 16. Is like so fucking perfect. I'm like,
I do really like that.
Yeah, this guy like really fucked up, and I think that's, I think you not buying them as father and son does kind of work because this is like subtle. This is like reading between the lines a lot, but maybe not too much. I'd have to rewatch Creature Commandos and PeaceMaker Season 2 to really firmly claim this, but my theory is Rick Flag Sr. didn't become a father until his son died.
Yeah.
Is kind of the attitude, or at least the feeling I'm getting off of watching all of this journey of his character. Like, it's not that he never loved his son, it's just he was always busy off doing, general stuff. General military.
He's also kind of a womanizer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, I think there's probably a degree of just, like, even if he was around for his son, he probably was a little bit either preoccupied with work stuff, but clearly has, like, a bit of a wandering eye, too.
Mm-hmm. Like, I think that's just there in, like, the subtext of the works is Rick Flag Sr. really only cared about, like he, I'm not going to say he didn't love his son or didn't care about him, but he didn't, like, really become his father until his son was dead. The attitude I've been getting, especially with like Rick Flag Jr. trying everything he can to live up to his father's legacy, because we do get lines like that in the first Suicide Squad movie. But whatever. But just that's the concept of Rick Flag Jr. as a character. Is he's always trying to impress Daddy.
Yeah.
And so you kind of like take that and run with it, and like, so what would be the need for him to do that is he's probably never heard his dad say that he's proud of him. He's probably never like actually felt like his dad views him as a son. He probably thinks his dad views him, or they probably have much more of like a distant sibling relationship based on the way that Senior is kind of characterized to me.
Yeah, and I really think Frank Grillo does a good job of selling just how much at a loss he is because his son died. But you're right, there is just this darker undercurrent with him of like, I don't doubt that he loved and misses his son, but how much of his time alive was wasted not being a dad, and is that why he regrets it more? I like how he like kind of playfully calls him Ricky all the time. I think that's a really good touch. And maybe even saying like I don't buy it is too strong because we don't ever get a scene where you have an opportunity to buy it. I think for me, I'm just, when I see those two actors, I just don't see father and son, so I wish I had a moment of like what would their dynamic have been. And again, maybe that's just asking for something that we wouldn't have needed, because the fact that you don't get it does help sell that relationship a lot more.
Mm-hmm. No, I'd agree. So one character that we haven't talked a lot about in this, and I do really really like, and he doesn't get like. He might be the only character that doesn't really get an arc, but I still thought this was just so good. Is I really like Vigilante.
Oh,
Adrian...
dude, he's so much fun. He's so cool. I when they went to the other universe and he was like, I want to find my double. I swear what I thought they were gonna do is they were gonna make us meet the comic book version of Vigilante, who's just a stone cold alcoholic badass. But then when they just give us the same Vigilante,
he's just not
so
changed at all.
He's just the same dude.
Yeah.
And his favorite Pokemon is still Infernape. I love it.
His favorite color is teal. Yeah. No, I adored that. I thought that was such a cool dynamic for them to have, where they're just the same dude. The theory floating around for a little bit was that when everyone had to run back to the main universe, that the Vigilantes switched, and I suppose you could still do it, but it would make Vigilante scenes in the finale make a little less, like, absolutely no sense. I'll just go ahead and say. He at that point he has to be mourning that he was supposed to have a best friend or something, and it just doesn't, like, I don't think it's gonna hit as well. But yeah, that was just like a really weird attitude to have if it is just the switch places. But that being said, just the way that, like, he's handled here, like when Peacemaker leaves and he just cries on Lee's shoulder, and she's like comforting him, I thought that was like so good. And then he just like can't admit it the next day and stuff, and the way he just feels like left out, and you know, he doesn't feel like an actual best friend. He's just the guy that they call on because they need him. I don't know. I thought that was just a really, really cool character to have.
I like that Harcourt gives him kind of the benefit of the doubt in the flashback in the finale, where she says that you need to be nicer to him and that he kind of sees you as a big brother. Like, I thought all that stuff was really good. And, like, you know, even though he doesn't treat him the best, when somebody needs something, they call Vigilante because he gets shit done. Peacemaker calls him in the beginning to dispose of the body. He's the one who stops Chris in the finale. Man's a one-man wrecking crew that just murders all those cops in the house. That's the thing about this version of the character, is like the personality is so off-putting, but then when he puts on the costume, he's just Vigilante. He's just fucking one-man army.
He's so cool.
It's so funny. I love that, like, dude.
In season 1, there's that like really jarring scene where Chris is supposed to take the shot and like kill the senator or something who's actually a butterfly, and he just can't do it because all he sees is a father sitting down with his family, and he can't do it. And then Vigilante is just like, I got it, and he just fucking like in cold blood just murders the entire family. And it's like, holy shit. And like Gunn's talking about it, like, I don't know what, like, everyone loves Adrian, and it's just objectively he's the worst person out of all of them. And like, just with the way he treats his mom, he's just terrible to her. And it's like, yeah, no, that's the thing, is sometimes we just like shitty people because you just don't. I think the reasoning is, you just don't get it super often. There's like, everyone, especially nowadays, they just do so much to like whitewash and like make the characters like squeaky clean. Like Indiana Jones didn't really actually give a shit if any of that stuff went to a museum. He was in it for the thrill of the hunt. It's just they contrasted him with Nazis that wanted to take over the world, so of course he comes off as the good guy, right? Like, that kind of, morally ambiguous character is really missing from a lot of modern media, so to have Vigilante be like, this kind of, like, sad little, like, fucking incel loser, but just be the most effective killing machine of the whole group is so entertaining.
We also just used to have, like, the cool, idiosyncratic, ambiguous, but also really deadly side character as just a staple of fiction that we just don't anymore. Like we had Mythos and Highlander, we had Spike and Buffy, we had Wesley and Angel for a little while. We had Wolverine in the comics when he was first created, and not later when he became his own main character. But like all these characters who are part of a team or part of a unit or part of a core cast that is always on the fringes, and because they're always on the fringes, everyone always likes them the most because their screen time's limited, and when they show up, it's because something's really cool. But because they're not part of the main characters, they can always do the things that are like just a bit too far beyond the line, who might just be a bit too morally ambiguous. I mean, this is the problem with Wolverine in a lot of comics going forward, is like the second he got popular, they just sanitized him a bit too much. And then when they tried to unsanitize him, they went too far in the other direction, and they could just never strike that balance again. Spike is the same way, where like when he first shows up, he's awesome. At a certain point, though, he's in it too fucking much, and he becomes less awesome because it's just a little pathetic. Vigilante's in that sweet spot right now where he's just in it enough, and he's just crazy enough that it's awesome. And I really hope that they don't try to abuse his popularity and make him show up more.
I
Because
don't want
like
him to have
just
his own show, you know?
no, I do not want a spin-off. I do not want a movie with him. Just like let him be the weird, quirky guy that shows up for 5 minutes an episode to just absolutely wreck shit.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? You were talking about all that. You know what I think he is? Or just
What?
that archetype is? It's the character that the DM creates to get the party out of shit when it gets too real.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is. It's the NPC that's part of your party so that you can survive.
Yeah. Like, oh shit. They just rolled a 1 and this boss has like 50 hit points. Okay. So Gargamel comes in and saves you.
That's so good. That's perfect. I love Vigilante. I mean, if we're not counting like real favorite emotional characters, he's the best character.
Yeah, no, like I think he gets some stuff to do. He's obviously like, really hurt, and like there's, you know, you were talking about the concept of the show as a take on the male loneliness epidemic, and he's like another side of that. He's literally living in his parents' basement, and he's like, you know, a man-child playing video games, and like literally like ask me about my favorite animal facts. Like that's adorable when it's a 7-year-old. It's pathetic when it's like a 30-year-old man. And
Yeah.
like, so he's literally just that. He's kind of the incel version of Chris. Because somehow Chris can just call up a fucking orgy whenever he feels like it. But Vigilante's like, you didn't invite me to the orgy? What the fuck, man?
No, you're right. And like Chris's whole thing is that he is always too much in his head about the consequences of the people that he kills. That's his whole arc for 2 seasons. And Vigilante's the exact opposite, where he sees it all as just like he's just slaughtering nobodies. He does not have any remorse.
Yeah, like especially when you get like the big reveal of his basement and it's just filled with, you know, piles of cocaine and money. And like, you don't spend any of this, it's like it's blood money. You'd never be able to feel clean again. Like, you'd be cursed. It's just...
You'll be cursed. Vigilante's so fucking funny. I love him.
Yeah. He's great. Like, I really think that Gunn just does have such a knack for the group dynamic stuff that comes out so well for him. So you just get some really, really great stuff in this because of that. Like, God, this scene with Economos and Eagly at the end, Eagly becoming the prime eagle was fucking hilarious and amazing.
That was so funny.
It just comes out of nowhere. James Gunn really just wanted to kill his friend. Like, he's like, James, you're making this new series. You're not going to put me in it? I don't really have a role for you. Just put me in it and let me get killed by something. All right, fuck it. You get killed by Eagly.
Oh man, yeah, no, I love all the parts that all these characters play. The thing about Vigilante also, he's so entertaining, and I feel like every time he shows up on screen, the show feels like it takes on a different energy without undercutting any of the drama. Like, you still feel like you get a chance to have those emotional conversations about what Chris is feeling or what they're doing, but he can still be him, and that's part of the fun. And it's also just another really good example of, like, look, sometimes the best part of a comic book adaptation is when they change everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because I promise you, comic book Vigilante would not work in this show, and that's okay.
So I had such a funny thing because like a lot of people had this as well, and I've seen some people try to like play it off, and I'm like, nah, man. When he showed up in season 1 and said his name was Vigilante, I'm like, oh man, they went with the boring like modern design. They should have had him just kept the cowboy outfit, and then like I find out that's 2 different characters.
Yeah, dude.
Called Vigilante. And I'm like, that's hilarious.
So Vigilante, there's more than a couple Vigilantes. The version of Vigilante that's in the comics is played mostly straight in Arrow. I mean, Arrow makes its own changes too, but he's played mostly straight in there, so you've already got him. The one thing about the Vigilante comics that's really kind of iconic and weird is he's basically a lawyer by day, or like a DA by day, and then Vigilante by night, so he's kind of got the Daredevil thing going, except that he actually kills the criminals, and he's always kind of on a razor's edge about that. And the thing about the comics that was really famous for a while is the series ends where in the final issue he just kills himself.
Damn.
Yeah. Like, literally the end of the series is just he kills himself because he can't take it.
Wow. And it's kind of crazy because like I was looking into some of the behind the scenes stuff. In season 1, Gunn ended up recasting Vigilante like halfway through production because he just they straight up did a Back to the Future, where he just decided that it wasn't working, and the actor that they'd initially settled on just wasn't portraying the character well, so they had to like scramble to find someone who was right for the role but also had the exact same build as the previous actor because the suit was already made. And then I come to find out that like everything they shot with the previous actor in the suit in season 1, including the dance intro, is kept because they were like that tight on production by the time they made this change, that they didn't have time to go back and reshoot or refilm any of it. So I don't know, I thought that was just really cool and really fascinating given just like how beloved Vigilante became in this series. Like everyone's fucking quoting him, you know, ask me about spiders. I know everything about spiders. It's just like the fucking, like he's somehow everybody's favorite character, and yet he's just like, you know, such a last minute addition and in the cast and everything. It's so crazy how well he works together. Makes you feel bad for the initial actor, but you know, that is kind of the purview of the director. So,
real quick, just for fun, do you know who the original actor was supposed to be?
No.
It's the guy who plays Johnny Cage in the live-action combat movies from the 90s.
Oh wow! So that's like quite a bit older and stuff too. That's crazy.
Yeah. It would have been a very, very different dynamic, but I don't know if any footage of that actually exists.
You know, I don't know. Like, I made the Nolan comparison earlier, but I don't think Gunn's, like, the type to be afraid to release, like, deleted scenes or previously filmed stuff the way Nolan, like, just pretends that nothing like that ever exists for his movies.
No, that's fair.
So I don't know if we'll ever see that or not. Did PeaceMaker ever get like a physical release? Season 1?
I'm pretty sure season 1 did. So then maybe there's deleted scenes on there, but I never bought it. Given that I like season 2 as much as I did, I might go back and buy it.
Yeah, that would be interesting to find out. But yeah, I just think everyone just gets such a good character arc in this. The fact that we have like 2 characters set up as not like main villains, but like antagonistic forces, and both of them end up joining our hero team by the end, I thought was really, really cool and really well handled. And the fact that like it's not set up throughout the entirety of the series that they're going to do that. They are like loyal literally until the last episode when they see how fucked everything's becoming. I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah, I really liked Bordeaux's turn because I think they're, depending on where they go in the future, there is this sort of this very obvious dangerous problem with salvation of how do you define metahuman, and at what point do you have guardrails to not just throw people in there because you hate them, which is what ends up happening with Chris.
Like,
but the fact that Bordeaux,
not even like it builds up to that. It's literally the first person
literally,
there.
Yeah. But like Bordeaux, she's a cyborg, so like she's a metahuman, but like, are cyborgs metahumans? Like, how is she different from Superman? Like, she sees the writing on the wall for that like pretty immediately, which is really good because her turn, it makes perfect sense for her, but it happens with a very limited amount of screen time. And I think them being able to articulate that danger with what happens to Chris, but also in that conversation they have at the Big Belly Burger where she's like, "Aren't you a metahuman?" That kind of brings it all out, and it's a good efficient way to get her on the good guy side without her needing like much more screen time.
Mm-hmm. I also forgot that Judo Master ends up joining the team as well by the end.
Oh yeah.
That was kind of crazy. He was another like random character that ended up being quite popular. I still love the moment in season 1 where like Chris was gonna get his get back fight, and then someone else just fucking ruins it for him. And he's like mad about that on principle. It's like, no, but the whole never mind.
I really like Judo Master in this too. He's so much fun.
Yeah, like the commitment to keeping the silly outfit on and everything, and he's just got like such a fun personality, and he's just like so, not physically intimidating at all, but just kicks everybody's ass. It's so cool. So like, see, he joins the team because just everybody that like we'd come to know from Argus that had been on Flag's side just like loses faith in him as he becomes closer and closer to Lex. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be real interesting to see how that all develops and other things. Has a Checkmate show or anything like that been announced or no?
It hasn't been announced as far as I know. I haven't seen anything. I know Checkmate showed up a bunch in the Arrowverse, and there might have been like either a spin-off or something about Checkmate in the Arrowverse that I'm forgetting. But as far as I know, they haven't said anything about any of these characters aside from the fact that they're just coming back in the abstract.
Yeah. And I mean, like, they leave them in a good place. Abs getting to set up like her spy agency but done right is really funny for me. Because I'm also watching the last season of Archer right now, where Lana takes over running the agency, and she wants it to be more ethical and like more efficient, and it's just all blowing up in her face, and it's really funny. So it's like feels like there might be a similar arc for Abs there. Like maybe espionage just isn't an ethical business. Who knows?
What, spying is wrong?
Maybe. And I thought it was interesting because I saw complaints like, I just don't understand why she feels she wants to be a spy, or why she's like, I'm like, because she's just good at it. Like she's good at like leading these teams and dealing with these people, and she wouldn't get to do that running a fucking pet store, right? Like she's just good at handling people. Is what is like clearly just shown by her, actions, and it just goes to show that like some people just really need everything spelled out for them, that they can't just kind of read between the lines or just interpret things for themselves.
And I mean, superhero fiction's always kind of ripe with like, these people are making the wrong decision on a certain level by just continuing to do what they do, but they continue to do what they do because they want to anyway. You don't see a lot of people like, after a really bad case where he's gotten beat to hell and he's pouring all of his troubles down a bottle of whiskey, complaining that maybe Philip Marlowe needs a new profession. Why does he keep needing to be a detective when everything is so terrible? Well, just because he's a detective. It's a thing he likes to do. That's the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
I did see people complain about the fact that they're adapting Salvation Run, which I thought was a very strange thing to complain about.
Yeah, I saw one of those today. It was like, whoa, it's comic accurate, but those comics suck. Kind of thing. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of been Gunn's thing from the beginning. Is he's the guy that like everyone says when they come on these projects. Oh, I read the comics, but they skimmed the back of the book at best. Whereas Gunn clearly has actually read this stuff, and I've not read the Salvation Run book. Like, someone said, oh, is that the one where Lex Luthor and the Joker just get in an actual fist fight? I'm like, okay, well, that sounds kind of cool, but I've still not read it. I don't know if it's actually good or not. But just the premise, I mean, it makes sense. Like, Flag's whole pitch for it, that he's obviously just parodying Lex Luthor, it makes sense, especially in the context of this as being a more established DC universe where you kind of have this crazy wacky shit every week. Why did no one leave the city when the big kaiju was fighting in Metropolis? Because that's just their fucking Tuesday, man. That's just what it's like there. So to have, people escape from Arkham and Bel Rev and whatever other fake prison every week, to just have that be the very comic book thing of, well, let's just make an Australia to send them off to, is a very comic book kind of, you take the, I'm trying to think of another one of these.
Planet Hulk is basically this, right? Hulk is too much trouble, throw him on another planet.
More or less, but I'm not specific to the throw them on another planet, but the character
Arkham
or the
City.
Not, can I finish my sentence, please? Because you're going off in the wrong direction.
My bad.
not specific to the story here, but just that concept of, well, here's a big weird plot hole that exists in the comics, or just a conceit that we've been relying on for years. So let's actually make that part of a story and just tell a story around why that's a thing, or doing some kind of story about that exploit. And so I think you get stories like this from time to time, and they vary in quality. Some of them are well, that was kind of pointless, and some of them are oh no, that's such a brilliant idea to point that out and make a whole story around it. But of course, as I say that, I can't fucking think of one. That's not just the exact same premise as Salvation of let's just make an Australia. And also, isn't it hilarious that Lex Luthor, cinematically constantly obsessed with land, tells them to go find land?
He's still a real estate mogul to the end. Well, to your point though, a couple examples that come to mind. I mean, these are a little bit smaller, but the idea that everyone just knows Daredevil's secret identity. So there's just a whole story of, okay, now Daredevil's secret identity is public. Or Snyder's Batman does this a little bit in Zero Year, where there's just a whole bunch of stuff throughout Zero Year where it's just comic booky things that Snyder tries to create an explanation for. Why does no one think that when Batman shows up, it's Bruce Wayne, who also coincidentally showed back up into the city around the same time? Oh, it's because the very first time Batman shows up, he shows up to save Bruce Wayne. That's why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, stuff like that. I feel like there's just, the perfect example. I'm going to think of it the second we end the episode. Oh, man. I guess, Jeff Johns' entire run kind of boils down to this. So there's a green spectrum, and there's obviously Sinestro using yellow light, so what about red lanterns? Is that a thing? Yes. And here's the story to explain all of it, and that's kind of the vibe of just taking that thing that seems obvious, or this conceit that we've just been operating on, and turning it into a story. I think there is merit to that. I don't know whether Salvation Run is good in and of itself, because I've not read that book, but I think there's a clear attraction to the premise that for better or worse, has not really been dealt with by anything else on film, because that's like another thing you have to juggle, is you're not just making a comic book show, right? You're trying to make a new universe and new movies and stuff that have to compete with, 15 almost, no, longer than that, because fucking Blade, right? Almost 30 years of comic book films where we keep just doing the same things, to the point where, like, the MCU is starting to get a lot of shit for this, because a lot of their last couple movies over the last, like, decade have just been the hero versus the mirror version of themselves. To the point where we had a whole team of, well, they're super soldiers or super spies. That's the movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that like people choose to harp on the whether or not the quality of the thing that they're adapting is good to me, because I feel like if you're adapting it, then you're not beholden to anything about the original. So why does it matter if the original is good or bad?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people have the weird, wrong assumption that when people are making movies, that they're actually reading the things that they are basing the movies on. Because more often than not, they are not. I don't think James Gunn sat here and like flipped through a Final Crisis omnibus and found all the tie-ins, and in the deep recesses of the tie-ins, he got through all of Countdown and then got through all of Salvation Run and was like, you know what? Salvation Run is the run that we're going to adapt. Instead of just being like, I have this idea about what if we set up a plot point where the metahumans are segregated? And someone was like, oh yeah, there is a thing in the comics called Salvation Run. Perfect. Let's just call it Salvation.
Yep. I think that's like totally fine. And, just to your point about adapting, name one comic book movie that is not Watchmen that is actually an adaptation, like a true adaptation of the thing it's inspired from, right? Like, most of the time, 99% of these fucking comic book movies, they're just taking the vibe or the general plot of the comic they're quote-unquote adapting, and they're doing a whole new story around it. Every fucking time. Watchmen and what? V for Vendetta?
Yeah, Watchmen, V for Vendetta, 300, I guess.
Yeah. And, like, people still don't realize 300 is a comic book movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem with a lot of these kinds of conversations too is whenever something like this is getting adapted, there's always that shorthand idea that like grading an adaptation is on a scale of how accurate it is, regardless of whether or not those accuracies make sense in the thing you're adapting, and most of the time they don't. So whether or not it's accurate to the comic thing has almost no bearing whatsoever with what the quality is going to be anyway. But then also at the same time, everyone's always a stickler for accuracy. For a thing that no one's ever talked about in 20 years, the second someone famous that they don't like mentions it. Mm-hmm. Like, where the fuck were all of you Salvation Run fans 20 years ago when that book came out? A little less than 20 years, but almost 20 years. Oh. No one's mentioned word one about Salvation Run since Final Crisis ended. And now everyone's suddenly the critic about Salvation Run. Come on now.
You see, I had this long-standing opinion on Salvation Run that I just never got to talk about. Because it just, funny enough, never came up in conversation because no one gives a shit about Salvation Run.
Every goddamn time. Every time something gets adapted, they're like, oh, they ruined X character. Since when did you care about X character?
Oh, show me the receipts. Oh no, never mind.
Literally.
That was my computer making a loud-ass noise. Sorry, folks. Yeah. I don't know.
We didn't hear
it. I heard it, and they're gonna hear it, I promise. Because of how I record my audio. A little behind-the-scenes thing. So yeah, there's a lot to be said about Peacemaker Season 2, but I think it was, like, just fucking phenomenal television. One of those things where did not feel like a 2-hour movie stretched out into an 8-episode series, which shouldn't be praised, but it is in this day and age, so we're going to give it. really felt like it was meant to be a series, and it worked super well. I'm super glad it didn't just all drop at once, that like we did it in the weekly release schedule. You honestly could have had a break in there, done like a 2 or 3 week hiatus, and it probably would have only helped build up the hype a little bit more. But yeah, just really like fucking great. I love how it's kind of an oddball thing, but since we're getting near the end, I just want to throw out a couple things. I liked how inconsistent the episode lengths were. So, you know, obviously the finale was almost an hour long. Some episodes were like around that 45-minute mark, and some were like in the low 30s. And I think that's just really cool because it makes it feel like each episode is as long as it needs to be, without, you know, overstaying its welcome.
Yeah, I mean it's truly a TV structure where like every episode is its own individual story, but they're all building towards the larger one, which seems like it's a no-brainer. But like you said, so much streaming garbage is basically a 2-hour movie stretched over 8 hours with no sense of pacing to the individual episodes. But this, no, every episode it had an identity, it had a concrete beginning, middle, and end. It always led into the next thing smoothly, and that means that some episodes are really long and some episodes are really short.
No, for sure. Like I remember I was feeling really tired, but I saw the new episode launch, and I'm like, I don't know if I have room for like a 45-minute thing. And I looked down, it's like 34 minutes. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of that worked. All right. Well, let's go ahead and do ratings, Steve, unless you had anything else you really, really wanted to get out there.
No, I think I'm basically covered.
All right. I will give this 4.5 out of 5 hardcore fights in bars. Yeah.
We really could have talked so much more about her too, because I feel like she has a great character arc throughout. But no, on a similar note, I'll give it 4 out of 5 spider molting processes. He's such an idiot. I love him.
All right.
He's so good.
Well, thanks for joining us for this departure from Ghoulie Gentleman. Things will just be all horror focus after this. What am I talking about? This totally qualifies. Nazi Earth, that's terrifying. Until next time, I'm the philosopher.
And I say shoot your local Nazi.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.